Smith would agree with Fryer's views since Fryer suggests offering financial rewards to motivate students to do better in school. With the incentive method based on Fryer's data, we are investing in better education methods that will help close the achievement gap.
Karl Marx would agree with Fryer. As a believer in communism and equality, he would support black students having the same and equal opportunities for education as other races. Factors that impact a child's learning process, like home and family life, school environment, peer interaction, teacher quality, and neighborhood conditions, should be similar too.
A second area Fryer focused on was police force. He recently analyzed over 1,000 shootings in 10 police departments in Texas, Florida, and California between 2000 and 2015. His research shows that there is no racial bias in police shootings, which contradicts major shootings on the news like Michael Brown and Tamir Rice. On the other hand, bias was found in non-lethal police force such as baton and pepper spray. For sources, Fryer used records from NYPD's Stop and Frisk program. Officers were 53% more likely to use force on minorities than white people. For compliant citizens, officers were still 21% more likely to use force on blacks than whites. To look at the citizen side, Fryer then looked at a federal civilian survey about encounters with law enforcement. Black and Hispanic citizens were 3 times more likely to have been treated with force than white people. Fryer thinks that the difference between lethal and non-lethal data lies in costs. Legal and psychological costs could cause a police officer to use less force instead of a gun. Lesser force typically goes unpunished, and Fryer said that all the minority he talked to mentioned lower level use of force as the reason they believe the world is corrupt. In 2015, Cody T. Ross published an anthropology paper about racial bias in county police shootings from 2011 to 2014. From the U.S. Police Shooting Database, he concluded that the probability of a police shooting a black unarmed person was 3.5 times more likely than a police shooting a white unarmed person. Meanwhile, the probability of black armed and shot by a police was 3 times the probability of being white armed and shot. There was more racial bias in large metropolitan counties with black residents and places with large wealth gaps. Ross and Fryer reached very different conclusions since they used different sources and statistic methods. Fryer used Houston's 500 shootings from 2000 to 2015, while Ross used counties across the nation with a less reliable database called Deadspin. Both agree there would be more accurate research with a well-documented and more accessible police encounter database. In the same month that Fryer's police shooting paper was published, research scientist Ted Miller published his work, entitled Perils of Police Action. His data included hospital emergency statistics and a database of police intervention-related deaths. Black people had high arrest and stop rates, but the possibility of being injured or dead was no more than white people. With simulated tests, Miller also found that unarmed black and unarmed white people had the same probability of being injured or killed. With a degree in biology and master's in philosophy, journalist Peter Aldous thinks the disparity of blacks being twice as likely to die from police gunfire may not be a result of police bias. Black people might live in places with higher crime rates or places that are more heavily policed, and these factors increase their encounter with the police. Aldous brings up findings that Philip Atiba Goff of the John Jay College of Criminal Justice found. Goff and his researchers found that out of 19,000 cases, 25% had police that threatened to use force, 37% involved physical contact without weapon use, and only 1% included lethal force, which was usually gunfire. Like Fryer's study, Goff found that race did not matter in lethal force. One author of the study, Jack Glazer of UC Berkeley, says, "They're small numbers, we have less confidence in them." Aldous thinks Fryer chose to emphasize on the lethal aspect and Goff did not. Fryer offers the solution of holding officers accountable for their actions, even when low-level force is used. Smith would agree with Fryer's use of incentives. With more consequences and punishment on the line, police would think twice before using any level of force on anyone. As an egalitarian, Marx would want each person, no matter what race, to be treated with equal respect. Whether it is non-lethal or lethal weapons, the race of a person should not determine how much force a police officer uses in the same situations.
Created using Powtoon.